That's
Welcome to Daddy-O Patio, everybody. Big thing happened this weekend. Our friend Ted.
Oh, dude, Ted.
He got himself in quite the dilemma. It all started. I mean, like first he freaking.
It's kind of hard. Like, where do you start? Like with the story with Ted, man. Like this was such an extreme event.
God Almighty!
Like it overshadows everything I've ever done in my life or will do.
He's never gonna look into his father's eyes again the same way.
What was his name again?
It was Ted.
We'll leave the last name out for
Ted's dad?
You're right.
Ted's dad.
His name was. Hey, just say his name and I'll bleep it out.
It was Ted's true.
Ted.
Sure. His dad Barry.
You gotta bleep all that out, though.
I talked to his dad Barry today.
I really didn't think that things would end up this way, but you know, sometimes these things happen, and it's part of growing up and being an adult. And sometimes people die, and sometimes bad things happen. You know, you just have to deal with them.
True.
You have to move on.
True, but like I could see this happen over a month's time, but this happened in a single night. That's the crazy part about it.
All right, let's quit beating around the bush here. So, Ted works at Walgreens. His manager gave him an opportunity to go to Comic-Con for free. He was like, why the hell not? And, so who did he go with?
Oh, Rick.
How
That's what it is.
yeah.
Gosh.
Rick, how from him?
We gotta bleep that name.
Yeah.
Yeah, please double bleep it.
Bleep
Rick's
that.
He's kind of a shady guy. He's always one of them types that like picks through dumpsters and like eats the fresh or the fruit that people throw out and
Frugal guy.
He's one of them fruit eaters. He's a fruit eater, and
But he was dressed up like Nightcrawler from X-Men, so he was entirely blue. And anything that like Rick was touching apparently was immediately blue the entire time.
This wasn't at Walgreens. This is when they got to Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Wait, so yeah, I mean, Rick and Ted, you would think, they're going to Comic-Con together. This is going to be a positive experience. Little did they could have never foreseen what was going to happen as soon as they stepped out of the door of Walgreens. They got off work, they both still had their vests on. And as soon as they stepped out, two fellas in a convertible pulled up and said, "Get on in." And they were like, "We don't know who you are." And they were like, "We're going to take you to Comic-Con. We've told you before we were going to meet up with you and take you to Comic-Con." So, Rick and Ted, Walgreens vests intact, get in the convertible with these two strangers. And then, what happened next?
Lorenzo, the driver, he had a stroke while they're on I-55 heading towards the Comic-Con event.
Getting off at Lafayette.
And he veered into the median and grinded his car 3 miles. And just sparks are flying in both directions. And
It was for like a block.
I mean, yeah, well, everybody's going to blow it up into 3 miles, obviously. But yeah, it was only like a meter or a block or something.
But it never caught on fire, though. You think it would, though.
No, it jumped back off the median. They were on their way again.
It kind of just transferred over.
Yeah.
Just transferred over to the wrong side of the highway.
So that's when they knew that.
So here they are, driving on the wrong side of the highway, full speed. Lorenzo's still having a damn heart attack in the driver's seat. Crispin is in the passenger seat. He grabs the wheel, flips Lorenzo's carcass out of the car, full speed, opposite direction on the highway. So Lorenzo's already turned to liquid bits on the highway, getting smashed to pieces. And now Crispin's driving with a grin on his face. And there's no way that Ted could have anticipated this in the back seat with his Walgreens vest still on.
They got to the next exit like pure velocity alone, man. They had no gas tank. The right back wheel was still missing. You can't just transfer a median on a car and expect, nothing to go wrong there.
But the thing is, they had so much momentum that they didn't need fuel or anything anymore. And no one even really needed to steer the car because they were going so fast that they could have just... They actually took a straight line there from then on. Like, anything that was in their path, they just took an exact straight line. They crushed through cemeteries. Corpses were flying everywhere. They blasted through a church. There was an elementary school. These kids were playing Foursquare. Guess what? All of them were dead. They all got blasted through. There was no... The janitor was trying to mop up some shit with that pink sawdust. He's dead, too.
He died slow, too. They ran over his legs.
But luckily the blood was contained because, like, the pink sawdust just immediately soaked it up.
He didn't bleed out.
The poor bastard, he got hit in such a way from behind the tailbone area, and he scorpioned in front of the car. His body was scorpioning while his buck teeth were grinding against the cement, and they were just turning to dust before his eyes, and he kept thinking about his dreams. Then he realized he didn't have any dreams. Then he was crunched in half and thrown into the sewer system.
He thought about 5th grade men's choir and all the good songs.
And the poor guy, like, they still haven't found him. They gave up the search after about 4 minutes.
They just had a powder. Fucking.
But
Yeah.
so the car is still in motion, and it's blasting through everything. There's nothing stopping it.
Crispin's at the wheel. I mean, it doesn't matter, though.
Yeah.
Because they're operating out of momentum alone.
Yeah.
Ted and what's his name? What? It was Ted and who?
And Rick.
Oh, Ted and Rick. The bad influence, Rick.
Right.
They're still in the back seat, thinking, "What the fuck is going on?" They've seen so much death in the last 8 minutes. It's absolutely unbelievable. They're looking into each other's eyes. No words are exchanged, just pupil connection, telepathic communication. What the fuck are we gonna do? Crispin's palming the wheel like nothing's going on, and they turn sideways. They're skidding sideways up to the front gates of Comic-Con, which coincidentally has Comic Sans as the font on the sign, and they blast through the gates fucking sideways. And I can't remember what happened after that.
What kind of blew my mind from there is the valet still tried to park their car.
Poor Betster, he got his whole arm ripped off because he grabbed the handle while the machine was still in motion, and it just yanked his arm off in one jolt. And he had to get a hook hand so he could keep valeting for the rest of the day.
It was so fast it just sheared his shoulder clear.
Yeah, right off. There wasn't even any blood.
He just
pulled
sheared
the appendage off
close,
so
man.
quick that the blood couldn't even react. It was too much for the body.
But they put most of his arm back on. They put most of his arm back on, except for his hand.
Just his hand. Yeah.
It was like a time machine.
The hand couldn't be saved. It was too mangled.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm sorry, we didn't even tell you what car it was yet. It was DeLorean.
DeLorean.
This is
Convertible DeLorean.
Convertible DeLorean. Still with the
Yeah, the top was totally down.
The suicide doors actually flip onto the other side and just underneath the car, so that's how it opens and closes all the time.
It also had dragonfly wings on it. It was a car, but it was also alive on its own. It was like a biological car. It wasn't just a car that was made out of mechanical things. It had evolved over millions of years, and it had wings with transparent wings with veins all through them.
Yeah, they tested its DNA, and it had blood from the Triassic period.
Yeah. It was like a Pokemon, man. The car just kept evolving.
Well, they put a bunch of stem cells around a bunch of bugs, and then it just happened.
It just happened.
Yeah. This is scientific knowledge. This is.
But where did the car crash? Didn't it land? It parked on William Shatner's ribcage, didn't it?
Just the front wheel.
Well, the thing is, what was weird about it crashing is it was. Well, first of all, it didn't even have wheels. It was just legs. So the car was just running really, really, really fast. And then when it crashed into the median, it started bleeding just this green blood that was acidic, like the Alien movies. And so they show up bleeding in a car spinning sideways, a bleeding car with legs spinning sideways with dragonfly wings at the gates of Comic-Con. One guy already down, several innocent bystanders dead.
Well, yeah, that dad lost his face. The acid hit his face and melted his face like cotton candy with water poured on it.
Dude, that's what he gets for dressing up like the Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
And you know what's fucked up is like, okay, so the valet, the poor soul who tried to park them, you saw what happened to him. But then after that,
Okay.
once the car was parked, the first thing Crispin did is he jumped out without using his arms at all. He just stuck his legs up in the air and shot up like a damn rocket and landed in a handstand on the ground. And with his feet, both of his feet, he grabbed the tongue of the nearest pedestrian and just ripped it right out. It was so fucked. It was the sickest thing I've ever seen in my life. Tore up an innocent pedestrian's tongue out with his bare, dirty feet that were just on like gas pedals of a biological car. It was the sickest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Well, the only reason he got away with it, though, is because as soon as he put his shoes on, he realized that he was lucky enough to pack his Heelys. So he just Heeled away from the crime scene, man.
Man,
So he ripped somebody's tongue out with Heelys.
basically.
No, it was with his bare.
And then Heeled away.
It was with his bare feet. Yeah, and then the Heelys flew onto both of his feet while he's still doing a handstand.
Well,
Did-
no,
he still
had the
hand sprung.
Heelys were on his hands.
What about the tongue? The tongue was between his big toe and his ring
Well, see,
toe.
So he
Ted-
handstand
Or
Heeled
is it the
away
pointer?
after he
well,
after he
his,
ripped
his shoe size is actually a 10.5, but these were 11.5. So that tongue added that support, where it made his foot.
It made it right.
Yeah, it made his foot a little bigger.
made it okay.
He used the.
He actually used the pedestrian's tongue as an insole in his Heelys. As he wheeled away, doing a handstand, hands in the Heelys.
It fixed his lower back problem he'd been having for a long, long time. The pedestrian never talked again, though.
Yeah,
He was
the
instantly
pedestrian
amused.
actually was a distant relative of Dr. Scholl's. You know, how convenient that his tongue would be used as an insole in this poor man's shoes so that he could relieve his lower back pains.
See, I admire that guy. He went out in public knowing that one day that his tongue is going to be used for an insult, like with a name like Scholl's.
Dude, like,
If you're akin to Dr. Scholl's, there's just 100% probability that someone's going to rip your tongue out with their feet and use your tongue as an insult. There's no way, there's nothing around
bound
it.
to happen.
And all the
I was told that there's a waiver that you had to sign.
there's no stopping that.
When you're born, the doctor forces your fucking limp, not connected arm into a signature.
Well, no, they take your tongue print on your right next to your baby footprints, and then Dr. Scholl signs all of them.
It's been doing it for years.
Yeah, he's a family of mutes, man.
So that's what.
So yeah. So
Ted
and Rick are just
just
baffled by the whole situation. Rick starts to get the pukes. He can't stop puking, and he starts puking too much. He's jiggling his whole body, and freaking Ted is like, "Hey man, we need to get you some Tums or something, man. You're gonna puke all your liquids out." And freaking lo and behold, there's a freaking water fountain right next to them, and so freaking what's his name? Rick grabs Ted. Oh wait, Ted grabs Rick and throws him into the fountain and squeezes his back like a sponge, so he absorbs every liquid drop out of the fountain, and he's dead. He drowned. So Rick is just face down in an empty fountain.
well, the fountain was Zima though.
It was Zima. It didn't quench his thirst. It ended him.
He proceeded to switch to Smirnoff Ice afterwards.
Yeah.
Directly.
So not only is he dead, but he's drunk as shit because he's just drowning in Zima, and his legs are flailing like a damn.
They couldn't stop
Fish.
the herd of homeless people came up and started sucking on his skin, trying to get as much of the freaking alcohol out of his pores as they possibly could. They drained him, man. They were like those sucker fish on the side of an aquarium.
Zima, goddamn.
So his dead carcass is saturated with Zima, and all these homeless
and
people
hobo
just come up
hickeys all over his body.
and
hobos are sucking like leeches.
One of them actually was a leech.
All
man.
the '90s alcohol out of his poor body.
So Ted just walks into Comic-Con and he's really set on getting Bruce Campbell's autograph.
He was set on something, man. He just witnessed way too much shit at this point. I think this is when he was saying that when he went to go fill his coffee up and put the creamer in, it was actually PCP. He was drinking a coffee latte covered in PCP, which he had no idea, and neither did Bruce.
So some of these things might not have happened that Ted was telling us about.
Yeah.
You just gotta chalk it up to PCP sometimes.
Well, last thing I heard, or like he saw Bruce Campbell at the table, and there's somebody in front of, or like there's a person about to get his autograph, and the guy turned around, and it was Ted's dad, and he saw Ted, and he saw that he wanted an autograph, and he kind of, sneered at him. He got the autograph from Bruce Campbell, and then he grabbed both of Bruce's hands and crunched them, so he couldn't sign it. He couldn't sign any more autographs. So like his dad got the last autograph, and then his dad freaking used his membranes under his wings to kind of fly away.
Everybody was an insect,
Dude.
except for Ted.
Well, shortly after that, Ted was texting me that he was going to see Kanye West perform at Comic-Con. It turns out he was so fucking high on PCP, he thought Danny Glover was Kanye West. So
he's watching Kanye Glover.
Kanye Glover.
And
Danny Glover's just trying to eat a funnel cake.
But what I heard, Danny Glover was about to leave the bathroom with this funnel cake.
And Ted rips the funnel cake out of his hand and asks, or he wants Danny Glover to sign the funnel cake, put his autograph on the funnel cake, while it's dripping from Danny Glover's lips.
Who he thinks is Kanye West.
Who he thinks is Kanye West. So he wants him to sign the funnel cake, Kanye West, while Danny Glover is trying to blast. He's walking to the bathroom to blast diarrhea because he's just eating a whole lot of grease, like just fried grease. He's got to go.
He had a side of grease too.
But he had a spaghetti noodle like funnel cake like spittle on the corner of his lip that was, and the other half was connected to Ted's hand, and that's what he wanted to sign the funnel cake. That's the cake he wanted to sign as Kanye West, and Danny Glover starts crying because he really has to go poop so bad he can't even hold it anymore, and he goes to open the bathroom door and Ted gives him a jerk like a fish on the end of a line, and Danny Glover loses it. He shits his pants.
Ted stuck his finger in his mouth and
gave him the rusty fish
hook. Rusty fish hook.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
So Danny Glover, so he trips over his own feet after this incident and breaks both of his incisors on the rim of a dirty public toilet seat. And so now Danny Glover's acting career is just over. There's not going to be any more Lethal Weapons because both of his front teeth are just fucked. And so Ted's standing there, Walgreens vest intact, powdered sugar all in his chest hair, wondering what he's going to do to help who he thinks is Kanye West continue to have a rap career, but it's really Danny Glover, whose Lethal Weapon sequel potential has now just been ended by his actions.
Well, that's where Danny Glover gets like the idea that, hey, I can't be an actor anymore. Why not be a vampire? I got shattered diagonal incisors now. Why don't I just drink human blood for a living? And so he finds the first janitor he can see.
Well, he went after Ted. He started going after Ted first.
Well, the janitor was in between. The janitor was mopping up the powder.
Yeah, the janitor.
Sawdust
Little did you know, the janitor at Comic-Con, he's so swift that as soon as he heard the sound of shattering teeth against the porcelain of this dirty toilet, as soon as he heard the sound of Danny Glover's shattering teeth against the porcelain, he teleported into the stall between these two people, ready to mop up
between Danny Glover's front teeth. I heard he teleported between Danny Glover's front teeth and his upper lip because he teleported wrong. His upper lip got stuck in between Danny Glover's front teeth. He kind of had to jerk his head back, and it made his lip bleed a little bit. But then he started mopping immediately because that's his job.
Yeah.
But so Danny Glover bit his artery in his neck and drank all of his blood within a minute.
So this janitor's soul immediately erupts out of his bleeding neck and just blossoms into the most beautiful thing ever, because everybody knows janitors have a secret beautiful past and they're tormented to their dirty work.
Oh, every single one. This one just happened to be a freelance heart surgeon in Japan that was wanted by the Yakuza for years.
So Danny Glover and Ted are in a stall watching this poor janitor's dead carcass blossom into like a beautiful butterfly of a soul of all his past amazing experiences, like a damn hologram in this public restroom. And it's got to be the most beautiful, multicolored, technicolor, geometric, sacred thing that they've ever seen. So both of them are standing there in awe, eyes wet with amazement of this janitor's soul. And it just begins to envelop the entire public restroom in a way that has never been seen.
Dude, yeah, that's when Ted took out his fake tooth that was blinking at this point and crushed it, and that's when everything in the bathroom turned into pixie sticks. It was just house-made pixie sticks everywhere.
And janitor isn't even a ghost anymore. His ghost turned into fucking sugar.
Yeah.
So
Everything just immediately turned into candy.
yeah. And then
So Ted might have been exaggerating these things because he, the PCP.
He's still on the PCP.
not the dad part.
But,
the dad part was really I could see it in his eyes that he was really tormented about the whole thing.
Oh, I know.
Watching his dad soar over his head,
Yeah.
the shadow of his father above him.
Yeah,
with the
knowing they'll
signature.
never.
So he's watching that. Bruce
is
Campbell comes out of nowhere and starts kissing his neck and rubbing his face with his crushed meat flesh hands. And
It was just kind of like a smack by that time. It wasn't even a
he
rub.
was just flapping his lifeless limbs in his face.
It was like a fish out of water, you know?
He's like,
the
hey.
little fins going.
He was like, I'm really sorry I couldn't give you that autograph. I want to make it up to you. And, he didn't have any hands. So he took his tongue. And I think was it Danny Glover's blood or was it the janitor's blood that he signed his shirt with his tongue with?
Danny Glover had already digested the janitor's blood by this point.
It was actually, it was the dust from Danny Glover's teeth, actually.
That's what it was. Yes,
It was the dust.
he kind of he spit on it with his tongue, and so it was kind of like
he ground it up.
wet sand.
Yeah, he ground it up into a beautiful ink, and it was a color that the human eye had actually never seen before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, if you see Ted out, ask him to describe this color. He'll do the best he can, but it's just so beautiful. Like every
Nearly
time,
impossible.
oh my god, your mind
Incomprehensible.
immediately goes
Yeah.
blank. Like,
But
Crazy.
didn't they made a shiny card out of the hologram card out of the janitor. They sold it at Comic-Con. His last face, the last facial expression he had hologrammed.
well, there was a second one too of him in his pure glory ghost mode.
Yeah, that was a Japanese version.
Yeah, Japanese.
There's only half of that card that actually exists.
Yeah.
You can only get half of it.
Yeah.
I think it was about
Yeah,
this.
they only made a half of it.
That was about the point where Ted's old childhood friend, what's his name?
Roger.
Came over in his rascal scooter, and Roger ran over his toe while about to shake Ted's hand, and shattered toe. His feet turned to jelly, or just the one turned to jelly, and Roger said, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. I thought I wanted to say hi to you, but he didn't." And so he just drove away. Left Ted with a jelly foot.
Well, on the back of Roger's Rascal, too, it said, "My other ride is a Millennium Falcon." Yeah. It was appropriate for the time being.
So Ted's got to figure out a way to get around Comic-Con. Because
Yeah, he's pissed. He's got a jelly foot.
Well, luckily there's enough small children and enough people dressed like R2-D2 that you have a movable crutch at all times.
That's true.
it's very true.
So he grabs one of them. He grabs this little 14-year-old who's dressed like R2-D2, and he starts going after Ted on the scooter. Because those things aren't that fast, and there's a lot of tight turns. So he can't really get away. And there's a guy dressed like Jeff Goldblum on the back of it, telling Roger you gotta go faster.
Must go faster.
And Ted's just screaming like a T-Rex while he's got this 14-year-old R2-D2 under his arm. I think he caught up.
I think he caught up. He picked him up. He grabbed him with his. He dropped his mandible like a freaking anaconda, and he grabbed Roger and shook him out of his wheelchair like the T-Rex did to that guy, to the lawyer. And he shook him left and right until his limp body just stopped moving like a dead bird, and then he just left him be. And Roger's dad was right there watching. He was taking a Polaroid picture of Chewbacca, and he actually caught his son being picked up and shook to death. So, but yeah.
Dude, the smell of his slobber, though. Like, I heard you could smell him from blocks away.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yep. And so eventually Ted spits him back up like John Voight in Anaconda, and Roger just winks at him and then dies.
He's dead immediately.
And
I mean, he knew what was coming to him.
Yeah.
Like, he just turned a man's foot into jelly.
Yeah, you don't just get away.
You
with
don't
something
survive
like
that.
No.
You know?
Especially with somebody as soulless and as high on PCP as Ted.
Exactly.
Yeah, Ted never stopped drinking that coffee, too. He kept going with it.
Yeah, brought a thermos.
God damn.
Yeah, I think he just
Yeah,
had
you gotta-
camel pack.
I mean, if you're going to an all-day event, you got to keep a thermos full of PCP. You know, I mean, that's the only way.
That's just a given. That's just like that's an unsecret rule.
Yeah, it's
that
the
is
unwritten
just,
rules of Comic-Con
or just of life.
and life. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're going
I
on
mean, it's not even Comic-Con. There was Ted told me about a time he went to a job interview with a thermos full of PCP, and so Ted pulls up on the rascal that he stole from Roger's carcass after he shook him to death in his filthy jaw, and he pulls up to this job interview. It's a big glass building, whole thing's made of glass, nothing but glass, and he crashes into the front door, and just creates a hole in it. And the CEO comes down like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And Ted's still driving this rascal scooter with his crippled Jellyfoot from Comic-Con, and the CEO comes down and looks him in the eyes. He says, "What the hell are you doing?" And the next thing that happened was just, I can't even. I couldn't even tell you.
He grabbed both his nipples and he stretched them till they connected, and then he ran them over vertically. He drove up on top of them vertically in front of every cubicle dwelling person in the office. They're all poking their head up watching this happen. And he stretched his nipples above his head like a triangle and let them go like a rubber band. They both slapped him. They gave him 2 burns on top of his head because his nipples slapped the top of his head so hard. And one of them, it disheveled his freaking toupee. His toupee came down at an angle and revealed his freckled bald head. And his freckles were just unsightly.
There was just one really big one that kind of looked like a bullseye.
Yeah.
It had a separate freckle ring around it.
One of them was just like a Rolo against the side of the head. It was just a gigantic volcanic brown freckle that should have been removed by a doctor 26 years ago, but he just let it take the nutrients from his brain and feed itself as a growth on his skin.
Yeah, and little do the old people at the grocery store know, but that's actually that's how they make Werther's Originals. Like they just let the moles on the back of a skinny bald CEO's head grow until they're filled with nutrients, and then they individually wrap those in gold foil and call them Werther's Originals. But I mean, we know what they are. I know what they are.
Yeah.
I know what they taste like.
Oh, you knew as a kid what they were. Just looking at it. Once in a while, if you were lucky, you got one with like a very long black hair. Just a single long black hair on it.
And you
can call them Werther's Originals, but you know they're just scalp moles. I mean, that's
how they
the
are.
truth of the matter.
Yeah.
Did he ever get that job?
So the job was at a rubber band company, and the CFO saw him kill the CEO. Well, he didn't kill him; he just maimed his nipples.
He might as well have killed him.
But,
He embarrassed him in such a way.
Exactly.
I mean, he took his ego down to dust.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that's what he went to school for too, is
Right.
building up his own ego there too. So.
And
Yeah.
he tried. I heard he tried to flush himself. That the CEO tried to flush himself down the toilet because he couldn't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
But they just found him sticking his shoe deep down into the hole, up to his knee.
He lost a good pair of Jordans that day.
With burn scars still on his scalp from it,
From his
from the
nipple.
velocity of his nipples.
His nipples hang like they were hanging down past his knees by this point.
Oh, this nipple. They couldn't connect them or bring them back where they were. That was
Forever
Oh, you
stretched
could
out.
connect. You could connect him though. In fact,
It was like
I think
two
as
at-
a fashion statement, he actually braided him a couple times.
did.
There's
Yeah.
photos of it.
I saw that.
Deep in the dark corners of the internet. Still,
It was like two long umbilical cords hanging from his chest.
Yeah. And he would braid them, and then he would wear them like, around the collar of his button-up shirts.
Yeah, like it'd just be like he didn't even wear a necktie. He would just have his nipples out from outside his collared shirt and just twist them in such a
braid it down
way.
the front.
But he
Yeah.
didn't even carry his Tech 9 after that either. He
But-
just threw his nipples really hard at people.
Yeah.
but the thing is though, he'd show up at a meeting not wearing a tie, just having his nipples up out over his collar, hanging down like that. But they were so sensitive that if the wind would blow on them, he'd get a shiver and he wouldn't even be able to continue speaking. And one time, this useless intern spilled hot coffee on his nipple skin tie, and sent him into the hospital actually for the next couple days.
Yeah. He had a stroke. It was too intense.
Oh man, he's
He went 5 minutes without a heartbeat because he couldn't even catch his breath.
he's been burned so many times at work. They burn him all the time. It's like a little game that everybody in the lunchroom plays. They burn him with cigarettes and stuff, and watch his nipples jiggle around his nipple tie.
I heard they like to turn the heat up to like 95 because then it gets really, really
Oh.
sensitive for him.
Yep.
Yeah. And then they rub ice cubes
Yeah,
on
it's
him.
called
Cool.
Or nipple darts. They play nipple darts too,
Yeah,
where they
yeah.
throw their cigarettes like darts and try to like stick them into the tips,
Yeah.
the tips of the nipple.
There was one intern telling me that they like to try to untie the tie, and before he can get it back together, they'll use his nipples to try to catch potatoes from like across the room. They mash potatoes and just scoop them back to their mouth.
His nipples.
Yeah, they had a food fight in the break room, and this is actually the CEO thought that his stretched nipples and burned scalp were actually a curse, and he was wearing them as a tie, but that wasn't taking full advantage of his circumstances. So one day they're all playing burn the CEO, throwing cigarettes at him, trying to burn his nipples and stuff, embarrassing the CEO, and so they start having a food fight. They're throwing hot mashed potatoes at him. The CEO suddenly realizes that he can use his nipples as like two sensitive tentacles to catch the mashed potatoes in the air, and he catches them like a damn wide receiver, and he gazes down at this gravy dripping mashed potato mass that he's just caught in his sensitive stretched nipples skin. And he looks at it and he swallows it in front of everybody. And as the gravy oozes down his lips, both his nipples go wild like two fire hoses filled with water. And they just start strangling all the different workers. The postman was there. The postman was just trying to give him a letter. And he strangled the postman with his ridiculously newly found strong nipples. Strangled the postman in front of all the co-workers. And his eyes rolled back in his head, like his eyes did like a 540 back into his head. You could see his pupils passing back
It
through.
came around a couple
they were,
times.
yeah, they were spinning like slot machines. But eventually they spun so fast that the heat it was just so hot that lava was just pouring from his eye sockets
He
while
got
his
burned
nipples
again.
went wild.
Burnt his own
Yeah.
nipples.
It reignited the burns on the top of his scalp there too.
So now he's crying lava, burning, and it's streaming down his chest to his sensitive nipple skin, burning himself all over again.
That's about the point where the nipples turned on him, didn't they?
They turned like they got electric on him.
They electrocuted him. Like one nipple stuck into an outlet in the wall, and the other one stuck into his mouth, and it just freaking shocked the shit out of him. He was gone before he hit the floor.
This is all in one day.
This all one day.
It was rough.
This is all in.
That poor
This is
CEO.
when lunch break.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny, like the headstone that I see that they're making is just two big areolas.
And Ted just sat there and watched all of this happen too, man.
Oh, that poor guy. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. This is a man's life we're talking about here.
Now he's dead, and he's got two areolas beautifully sculpted in 3 dimensions, actually. His tombstone has 2 wildly long sculptures of both of his nipples and what they looked like at the point of his death.
Diamond
And
encrusted, too.
it's weird. It's weird. Like, you look at the cemetery and all the headstones, like, kind of look the same. And then there's this one with just these huge, long, purple nipples that are just
dude.
exuding
That
heat and electricity.
that elderly guy. Remember he tripped over the flowers on his wife's grave and
Cliff.
and
yeah, Cliff.
both his eyes got impaled by the nipples on the nipple monument. And he didn't have eyes anymore. His eyes were freaking left. He just ripped both eyes and left them on the tips of the nipples.
Yeah, they never took those. They never took the eyes out. They just let them there.
Well, they did give the old man free glass eyes, so he's got glass eyes now.
Yeah, he chose 2 bald eagles. Like he's got
just-
2
yeah.
glass bald eagle eyes.
They're actually like they're kind of like the pogs that if you turn them to an angle, they do an animation, but they have that same thing in his eyes. So he if he looks at you in a different direction, it flaps the wings of the eagles in his eyes. So that's what he chose because his grandchildren they like that.
Old Cliff, man.
Yeah, Ted got away though.
Yeah.
He was
Of
able.
course he did.
I mean, with the slip of the jellyfoot, he was
The
able
old
to,
jellyfoot.
That wiry smile that he'll
Yep.
do once in a while.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and honestly, I think the last time anybody's ever heard from him is those 2 fishermen down by the creek who were fishing, and one of them hooked his gill, and they pulled him in, and they started filleting him without even asking him questions.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he survived that. I think that's the last anybody's ever heard from him.
Yeah. So,
Well,
I mean, I think he's he's got bones and a ghost, and I can't tell which one's really him. Sometimes I see the bones around, and I think it's him, and then sometimes I see his ghost, and I think it's him, and I think he's kind of just, he's split up, he's divided a little bit. He's not really, he hasn't been himself.
It's true.
he'll never be himself,
Yeah.
and I don't think he ever really was himself.
He entered a dualistic.
This weekend was the only time that he could possibly
existence.
be himself.
Yeah, he's a dualist.
He's a
You know?
dualist. He's a ghost butterfly. He's a skeleton. He's everything, and he's all around us.
yeah.
And if you,
We just wanted to share that with you guys.
yeah,
Because this is all pretty sudden and just happened. I mean, those fishermen caught him, was that last night or the night before?
it was. I think it was late last night.
Yeah.
Like they were night fishing for catfish.
And,
They caught him instead.
Yeah. So that's,
What I don't understand
So
is they ate him before they even asked him any questions.
Yeah.
But can you blame him?
I mean,
Ted
yeah.
looked pretty
Ted
delicious.
looks pretty, yeah. He's got a nice definition.
yeah, like
Come back to us.
yeah, just come back to us. Come back to us, Ted.
Ted, come back.
Come back to us.
It's time
Ted.
to come back, Ted.
Come back to us.
Ted,
We
come
really
back.
need
Ted.
to talk about Ted coming back, guys. Ted.
Ted, come back to us.
Daddy or
Ted,
Ted,
come
Ted,
back.
Come back to us, Ted. Ted,
Come back, Ted.
Ted, come back. Ted!